Live anyway. What the hell is up, everybody? We just went live and we lost Charles, but hopefully he'll be back. Either way, we'll get him in one way or another. Today we're joined by Charles LaRocca, maybe, of the Bourbon Street Shots, Charlie Gonzalez from the Bird Rights, and then Lynn Burton of ESPN 1420 in Lafayette. Gentlemen, been waiting for this one. This is our fifth round table. Charles and Charlie are OGs, but Lynn is new. I've been on Lynn's show a few times, ESPN 1420. This man knows his pels. So very excited about today's show. And we'll jump right in here, skip the pleasantries so you don't have to sit through that. We're getting right down to it right away. The free agency, the trades all getting crazy immediately. Lonzo Ball signs with the Chicago Bulls at 5 o'clock, essentially 5:01, like seconds 01, and he's a Chicago Bulls. A sign and trade sent to Chicago. So Charlie, I know you're feeling pretty negative. We're going to start it with you. What did you think about the Lonzo Ball sign and trade, what they got in exchange, the money, all of that?
To put it bluntly, I don't think anything makes sense right now. There only one person could allow for Lonzo Ball to be a Bull, and that's, well, I should say one contingent, and that's David Griffin, Trajan Langdon in the front office of the New Orleans Pelicans. Those are the only people that allowed Lonzo Ball to become a Chicago Bull. They had matching rights on his restricted free agency. They had all control. They either showed their cards too early, saying there's no way we're going to match. We're going to let him walk. They showed their cards too early in their pursuit of Lowry, which clearly was way too loud and well documented publicly, especially when you compare to the Jonas Valanciunas trade that was made that kind of popped up out of nowhere, or pretty much any of their transactions. Generally, they've been pretty good about being quiet, but the Lowry deal was, or the Lowry interest was exceedingly well documented by a lot of reputable people. And in doing so, I feel like they really showed their cards and kind of screwed themselves to begin with, put themselves behind the 8 ball, got minimal return. A lot of people are out there saying that, just wait, there's more coming. There's going to be more stuff folded into XYZ, whether you're folding it into the Memphis trade or folding it into Lonzo RFA or this, that, and the other. And maybe that's happening. But they ultimately got rid of an asset, a very good player in Lonzo Ball, and got minimal return for him. So they're not going to be able to flip those individual players, Satoransky or Temple or the second round pick that they got, for anything remotely close to Lonzo Ball's value. So as far as I'm considering, like, that's just a total failure. When you have all the power, when everything is in your hands to maneuver and handle this situation, they just bungled it. They bungled the Lonzo Ball top to bottom, in my opinion. Whether you wanted to keep him or lose him, they just did a bad job.
A very good player might be hyperbole, in my opinion. Charles, I'm
very sought after player. Yeah, very sought after.
Okay. Charles, why don't you go ahead? What did you think of the Lonzo Ball trade, what they got in exchange, the contract that they offered him, all that?
So I think in a nutshell, and this might catch a lot of slack, just looking at the contracts from 4 years, 4 years, 85 for Lonzo and 4 years, 47 for Graham, I feel much safer paying Graham 4 years, 47. Now that's just in a vacuum, because that doesn't go into the cost that it took to get that contract, a first round pick. You gave up on paper the better player, and you lost the pick. You gave the better player, and you got Satoransky and Temple, who are solid players. But to me, if that is a loss, because ideally, you would want Chicago sending a first to Charlotte, and then you're getting Graham back, and they're getting Lonzo. That's to me is how it should have went down. But the fact that I think Griffin's getting squeezed, and we see that happening because everybody knows the Pelicans need to win right now. Teams know that. Teams know that we're desperate. But overall, I'm less upset than Charlie is, because I know the asset wise, it's terrible. You're giving up an asset, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I think right now, if you're looking at on paper, the players we got back, we got a backup guard, 2 solid backup guards. Graham is a tactical downgrade than Lonzo on paper, but I think for what the Pelicans need him to do, he does fit. So if you're asking me and I'm looking at the roster, I think we're better today at this point in the year than we were before. So I'm not as upset as Charlie, but I think anybody would say that this free agency has been a disappointment to start off, especially when you consider what was on the table for Lonzo at the deadline.
In essence, they're giving up 2 assets because they gave up their 2022 first round pick and they can't trade their 2023 first round pick because you can't trade 2 years in a row. You have to have a pick. Something like
Ted
that.
Stepien rule.
Yeah. Lynn, you've been waiting very patiently. Thank you, sir. Newest addition to the crew of all the roundtables we've put together. What do you think about the Lonzo trade? Anything to add? Anything you disagree or agree with Charlie and Charles?
See, okay, so I'm kind of in the middle. I lean more towards Charles than Charlie, but I'll say this: I'm okay with what they got, but I'm not okay with looking at what San Antonio got for an unrestricted free agent of DeMar DeRozan when you compare it to what we got back with Satoransky and Temple. And it's like Charles said, that the first round pick should have come from them. So that's why I'm like, But at the end of the day, Ball's a restricted free agent. He didn't want to be here. So I'm at least happy that even if they would have matched it, I don't want to have someone who doesn't want to be here. So I'm okay with seeing how Graham has been showing that he's happy that he got here, excited. So I'm okay with that. But I'm in between the two gentlemen when it comes to like how this trade situation and free agency began.
I lean more towards Charles. The contract is what made me happy. Like 4 years, $47 million, as opposed to 4 years, $85 million is incredibly drastic. And Lonzo, like the big media outlets and the guys in the NBA say he's going to be good for somebody. And I agree, but the way it can go for New Orleans, which it hasn't gone as of right now, way it could go for New Orleans in terms of adding somebody via trade, adding somebody via free agency, well, maybe in the future now, I think is a better alternative than banking on Lonzo to be a star, because the inconsistency this last year, I mean, he'd go 8 for 11, score 30-some points, and then follow it up with 2 for 12 and 4 turnovers and just be a very average point guard. Like he just didn't do enough for me to sign him to 4 years, $85 million. Giving up the first round pick sucks. In essence, not being able to use 2023 in a trade sucks. But also the thing about Devonte is he adds so much more spacing. He's a more consistent 3-point shooter. It's not up and down every night. He's a volume 3-point shooter that adds spacing. There's also the negatives of the fact that he is 6'1" and a negative defensively.
I gotta jump because the defense has just taken a walloping. I'm sorry. Like Lonzo may not be this lockdown guy. Now they tried him throughout the season. There was that series of I think it was 2 weeks where poor Lonzo was guarding Luka and going like it was like he had Luka back to back. Then it was Kawhi and everything like that, and they were throwing at him every night. And I was like, this is not fair. But Lonzo's still a good defender. I don't think anyone would argue that he's a good defensive player. He raises the defensive IQ and ceiling of your team overall. And Graham is just not that. His stats actually skew him pretty well towards being a solid defender. However, individually, when you watch him, the eye test, he's just not impactful. And you couple that with Valanciunas is there, and Valanciunas, in my opinion, is a worse defender than what Adams was, and Adams brought you. So, yes, the offense may actually have an uptick to some degree, but the defense, which, again, was the cause of concern all last year, despite hiring Stan Van Gundy, is moribund. It's just absolutely at the bottom of the barrel right now, comparatively. And I don't know what they're going to do to salvage it. It's not like there's, prime Ron Artest available to come bring in or something like that. So I don't see where they're going to be able to elevate that unless they're hoping for significant improvement that we can anticipate from BI and Zion, which, I guess you hope for, but still that's, wishing in one hand and, crapping in the other, see which gets filled first.
Yeah, I mean, do you bank on, hopefully getting Jackson Hayes back, and is he gonna be? Is he gonna be? Yeah, just add to the negativity. Why don't I? But I mean, that length and athleticism it's difficult to replace. He grew so much in terms of the fundamental side of the game. And I mean, you don't have that big guy who can defend the Nikola Jokic's, the Joel Embiid's now that Steven Adams is gone. I mean, Najee Marshall's back. That's great. Didi Louzada is going to be back, but where are those two at offensively? Can they contribute offensively? Where is Herb Jones in terms of offense? Because these are three guys who are going to be, I think, pretty solid wing defenders in the NBA. Herb obviously has some room to grow because he's young, but is that going to be enough? Like, where do you go get more help defensively? Lynn, do you have any ideas there?
See, I would think that it would have to be in this supposed trade situation that we keep hearing about, them trying to get some sort of wing in Joe Ingles, maybe someone of that magnitude. But if not, then I really think it's going to have to come down to the fact that our franchise players have to be franchise players and stop clowning around. I think at the end of the day, I think that's what it has to be. We can't keep bringing in different vet after different vet and expecting them to be the leader of the situation when we're paying you to, and we expect y'all to be our franchise guys. And I think that's why you bring in a Willie Green, to get those two dudes to buy in and play defense.
Charles, it looked like you had something to say there too.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on Lynn. I totally agree. At some point, I think that's kind of what this offseason is about too. How you get rid of Stan, right? You bring in guys that complement Zion and BI offensively. But now I think the onus is on them to be leaders, step up and take the charge defensively. Because, I mean, how far is your team going to go anyway if your best players never defend?
Play defense, yeah.
Yeah, you have two, and especially at the wing. These are wing players, Zion and BI. That's, probably maybe the most important position on defense and our two best players don't play defense right now consistently enough. So I think it's on them to lead that charge and bring the fire. And as far as, Devonte Graham, his numbers, of course, losing Lonzo, that's going to impact our defense a lot. And he's 6'1". I think he tries, Devonte Graham. I think he does put effort in. But until our best players show the effort to play defense, I think it's not going to ever be a good defensive team. And when you look at the Bucks, who just won the championship, how many great defenders were on that Bucks team?
Giannis, Drew, Chris,
PJ
Lopez to protect the rim, PJ Tucker.
So
even Connaughton, he tried.
The only counter on that I'll say, and this is not to disagree with you all at all, I 100% agree. Zion and BI both have capability to be good defenders. Maybe not like all-world, all-NBA Giannis or anything like that, but good defenders. They have every tool in the box, and they can do it. But, we look to another generational offensive superstar, not too far to the west with the Mavericks and Luka is no defensive stud. Like, he's just not. He carries that offense pretty much by himself, and he has guys around him that are average to decent defenders. They've schemed out. I know I'm being I'm trying, but that's my point. They're in the playoffs. That team is in the playoffs. Like, that team is winning games. They took the Clippers to 7. Like, that is a team that is just as piecemeal. And again, another team that missed out on Kyle Lowry. There's not the situations are fairly similar in a lot of ways, except
they had beef with the coach too.
Yeah,
they did.
I mean,
they fired their coach.
If the Pelicans had made it to the playoffs last year and took the Clippers to 7 games, I don't think anybody would be saying anything really right now about it. Be like, oh, okay, whatever, they'll get it figured out, like, kind of thing. Like, it would have shown a lot of growth, but they just haven't. And so everyone's, I think, is just trying to beg, borrow, and steal and figure out where the magic is going to come from. And I don't know. We're hoping there's going to be somebody that makes an impact on, like you said, the franchise guys do have to step up. There's no question about that. You're the guys. Okay, take ownership. BI had that big Zach Lowe article come out before last season saying, oh, you got to push me. I want you to push me. And then, he goes and plays his music so loud that he pisses Stan Van Gundy off, and the whole catastrophe. Allegedly. Erroneous on both counts.
Yeah, there was no love lost between them.
No.
No.
it's just like a catastrophe right now, in my opinion, in comparison to the Dallas situation, who has somewhat similar distressed assets and a coaching situation. And you look at both of them, and Luka's about to sign $200+ million. Like they're succeeding, they're winning. Winning fixes all.
Speaking of winning, the Pelicans did a lot of losing in the last little bit of in the last clutch moments of games, and well, they get a guy who's pretty clutch late in Devonte Graham. You look at the numbers; he's able to put up some pretty solid numbers late and hit some clutch shots. That's a positive, right? I mean, I think he's a shot maker. He's a shot creator for himself. Also, dishes out assists. I'm pretty sure not this season, but last season, he dished out 7.5 assists a game, too. So he's a creator offensively.
He did that while scoring 19 points per game, too. You have to look at the season before last, because without the LaMelo Ball, when he was still doing number one, and let's not forget when B.I. was most improved, LeBron was saying how he thought the most improved was actually Devonte Graham.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that he's doing that at 6'1" is huge. At least to me, I think that shows a lot. And he wants to be in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Graham too, like just look at what he's built of too. He's a 2nd-round pick, 4 years at Kansas. Who like the guy is a ball player, you know. Like he wants to go out there and compete and win. And if you look at his shooting percentages in the nutshell, it doesn't look good. He's sub 40 across the board, but he shoots 9 threes a game. He shot 8 threes a game. He shot 3 2-point attempts. The majority of his shots are coming from 3-point range. Of course, he's going to, it says I'm not surprised that he shoots a poor percentage. And when you look at the film, the Pelicans didn't have anybody last year that can create off the dribble threes. There's nobody. No one, and that was a big hole on the roster that I think getting Graham for $14 million, you solve that problem now. You got a shot creator that can hunt 3-point shots, and on a team-friendly contract for the next 4 years. Like, I'm totally in love with the Devonte Graham signing.
I think
with other moves, pending other moves, of course. But
I think, I like this one. Look at this one, guys. Thank you, Lord. Oh yeah, Reed City 5. Appreciate it.
Let me pour one out for the.
I just can. It's so visual. Like just it's I can see it. Yeah.
Right.
Let me get the cognac.
Pour 3 out for that. Jesus.
Right. The thing too about Graham is obviously it's improved spacing based off what we're talking about with creation off the dribble. And Zion shot 60% field goal percentage last year with Steven Adams down in the paint too. And I think we're going to see Brandon Ingram attack the basket a lot more this year. We saw it very, very little last year with how clogged everything was. This is a net positive. And like you said, Charles, assuming they add more and continue to add, especially wings and somebody that can guard at the point of attack. I really think this is a net positive. There are negatives, but ultimately there's a net positive there, I think.
Offensively, I love it because you add Jonas Valanciunas to the mix, who can be this stretch the floor, open up the lanes for Brandon Ingram and Zion. You have Graham on the other side. It puts shooters around him. It depends on who's that last guy you put in the mix. But everything you said, I definitely expect to see Brandon Ingram driving more because of this.
Yeah.
Well, let's
go ahead.
I was gonna say let's all make sure though. Valanciunas ain't he ain't Brook Lopez, at least not yet. Like he can. I think he has the potential to get there. Like we could see like a Lopez-ish leap where he is pulling threes this year. I don't know if Lopez-ish. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that'll work.
I tried.
There you go.
I meant to say ask. I don't think I said that. I meshed it. But he eats at the rim. Now, granted, it's not like he was playing before with like a bunch of star shooters. John Morant and exactly Steph Curry. So they were able to get that done and coexist. So I don't think they can't figure it out. Trust me. I like we talked about before. I love Valanciunas as a player. I hope he works out. I would love nothing more than him to be successful here. And especially with Zion. But they've got a lot of work to do. Willie's got a lot of work ahead of him to figure out how he's going to blend just on the offensive end And that's not even, and we're not even talking about defense yet. So, I mean, like defense might end up being a curse word by the end of the season. You might get censored just for saying the word defense. But it's interesting. I like where Lynn, I like where your head's at with that. Like, I don't disagree. Like, I like where JV can be. And
we just have to see it. No,
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, because this is all hyperbole of like us hypothesizing what could happen, but that's the thing we have to see. Does his 3-point percentage work when you put him in that situation where he's getting the Brook Lopez style things? That's what we're gonna have to see if it does work then.
Yeah. For me, when it comes to Valanciunas, I think the biggest difference is going to be with Adams. You didn't have to guard him, even down low. Like, you could just put a small guy on him, and you can wall the paint off of Zion. With Valanciunas, you can't just put a small on Valanciunas. He will abuse that, and I think having a guy that can actually be a threat to score inside. Because I mean, even with the paint clogged, Zion still put up 27 on 61% shooting. So that doesn't worry me. I think having a guy that he can actually dump off to, with the ability to finish, is going to be huge. Or
and doesn't have butterfingers.
Yeah, it doesn't have exactly.
What a concept.
The Zion JV pick and roll is going to be absolutely menacing. Like that there's no question without that. Because if you've got BI, Nah, and Devonte space, like spotting up, or even just running any sort of motion, that is going to be a devastating 1-2 combo, because you just basically have like Thor and the Hulk rolling at the rim.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. And think about moments when Brandon and Zion can't score, and it's like, oh, well, the young guys can't get it. You can go to him. He was Memphis's second best and first best player sometimes last year.
17 and 12. 17 and 12 is what he put up last year. Compare that to Steven Adams' numbers. It's like he essentially doubled what Steven Adams put up. And it's not all about the stat sheet, but that's a big point too. Also, Nah has an opportunity to really take a leap this coming year.
He has to.
Talking about Nah on the
that's the X factor.
Definitely.
He absolutely has to. Like, it's not even an opportunity. Like, for this team to be successful next year, based on where they are at this very moment in time, and the missing out, Elliot, like you pointed out today about Tim Hardaway Jr., like missing out on big wings and guards like that they've been unable to land. It's essential that Nah is a very good defensive player, checking people all over the floor at the point of attack, and also a solid offensive player. It can be like he can be their fifth option now, really, like easily. If he's in the starting lineup, Nah can be your fifth guy.
Most improved.
Yeah.
Possible.
It's on the table.
Would love to see it. And now, question for you guys. Now that we're talking about the backcourt, this is an excellent one from a listener. Who is the starting point guard? Is it Graham? Is it Kyra? I don't think Kyra's ready for that. I mean, is it Nah? He's a combo guard. I definitely prefer him at the 2 as opposed to the 1 for sure. He said it himself. He's a 2. Is Graham the starter?
As of now, he has to be.
What makes you say that? Go ahead.
Just as of now, because he's the guy with the most experience out of our guys in the situation who I feel comfortable with. But again, I think it'll be a situation of him and Point Zion running the facilitation. We can't forget about Point Zion, but unless we pick someone up who, I don't know, maybe a Reggie Jackson. I saw people in the comments talking about that, but as of now, it has to be him.
I think agree. I 100% agree. It has to be right now, because I think you're going to lean a lot, even more so, into Point Zion, into using Brandon Ingram as a creator. You're going to have to utilize them a lot, as well as flexing as much as you can with Graham, because I'm sorry, Kyrie tailed off at the end last year. Now that's rookie wall and pandemic year and all these. There's a million reasons. Maybe he'll be much better next season. And I'm not saying like kick Kyrie to the curb. But he's a second-year player. He's going to have some bumps. And Graham's 26. Like Charles said, he was a 4-year player at Kansas. Like, dude is experienced. He's at least somewhat poised. Like you said, he's good in the clutch. The dude will be fine, especially as the third or fourth option offensively. It's all going to just come down as far as players on the court who can handle enough defensively to keep this team afloat on that end, because they're going to put points on the board easily. It's just all there is. They've got 5 guys as of right now, projected starters, if you include Na and Graham, that are all capable of putting up 20 points a game, literally.
Yeah. I'm going to play a little devil's advocate. My prediction, I think Graham ends up coming off the bench. And they run into like a non-traditional role with kind of BI, Zion, and Na starting the game off, switching up on playmaking duties, because I think they're all 3 like natural scorers. And if I'm David Griffin, my focus is no longer getting another guard, because what you have Kyra, you got Garrett Temple, you got Graham. I think if I'm David Griffin, I mean, who's after Zion as a 4? And if you want to bump Zion up to a 3, which they say Zion's a perimeter player, then who are you going to have at that 4 spot that can be switchy, be a rangy defender? And if that was me, if I was Griffin, that would be my focus. And now you have Graham come off the bench as a 6-man, a role he's already had experience in. And I think it's going to come down to what's more intriguing to me is who finishes games between Na and Graham.
And wait, can I ask you, in that lineup you're saying, who's the 4th person? Like, who would be the final starter? Because I assume it would be Valanciunas, Brandon, Zion, Na. Who do you think would be that person in there inside of that?
So who I would want, I don't know, because it depends on who they're after. But of course, I think there's options in free agency. There's Kelly Oubre. You can go get a Harrison Barnes, and maybe you go talk to Sacramento, see if you can get Barnes back in a trade. Go off and seeing that's why I wish maybe instead
it'd be really nice to have a 2022 first-round pick to trade for Barnes,
or instead of being Satoransky, why don't we go get Thaddeus Young like the Spurs did? And
and that goes back to my issue with the thing of
exactly
what are they trading for?
Here's another point too, is that there can be a variety of starting lineups. 504 for life. Adding that in there, only Zion and BI for sure starters. I completely agree with that. Somebody's going to get hurt, something like that too, obviously. I mean, it's an 82-game season, and you can try different lineups. I think as of right now, I would assume the closing lineup will be Na, Graham, BI, Zion, and X, whether it's they think JV can finish games, which probably not. And then there's another 4 that we were talking about in Trey Murphy that the Pels just added in the draft. I'm not guaranteeing he's going to be, awesome right away, but I think he's a switchable guy who's going to need to gain a little bit of weight, work on that foot speed. But I mean, the Pels drafted him for a reason. He's more of a 3-4 than a 4-5 to me, but I really like what Murphy can be. He's also 21, so he's a little more NBA ready. And if it comes down to it and the Pels can't get Kelly Oubre, Harrison Barnes, whatever, I think we saw Najee start last year. I mean, I would prefer him off the bench, obviously based on talent, but he did start.
Yeah, and there's an option. They're still hard out there too. We don't know what's going to happen with Josh Hart, so he's going to be either in that signing trade for another player, or if there's nothing out there, I don't think there's a way that he's walking away for nothing, right? There's no way that Josh Hart is just going to leave and get nothing back. So you can either fit him on the roster or trade him. So there's options.
It is 9:37 Eastern Standard Time on August 3rd, and we have currently 15 players on the roster, not including Josh Hart is restricted free agent, and Willie Hernan-Gomez. They have a ton of players right now. It's kind of insane. Yeah. And so obviously, quote unquote, something's going to happen. I know everyone's been saying something's going to give, but I just don't know what or where. I think I've seen people hypothesize about, Joe Ingles or some other options. Buddy Hield's been thrown around. I just don't know how. Chris, I love you.
Hey, what up, Chris?
Go ahead.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how they're supposed to pull a rabbit out of a hat, considering they don't really have a hat anymore. I just don't see where they're going to be able to pull. Hart's he's a good player. He's not extremely valuable. If you want to add him, and I wouldn't necessarily want to flip him for Harrison Barnes if I was Sacramento. I wouldn't want to do that unless it's purely a money move. So wherever they're going to try and upgrade the roster. Like Charles, you're exactly right, though. I totally agree with you. They need a 4-3-3-4 versatile forward that can be able to hit shots and defend multiple positions, just to be that kind of plug and play person. People talked about Larry Nance, but even Zach Lowe today on the Low Post said the whole Larry Nance rumors were all kind of impossible. Like they were drummed up. Cleveland loves him. It's not true. So I was really hoping for Nance myself, and then we lost James Johnson today to Brooklyn. So everything's great.
Yeah.
How do y'all feel about Justice Winslow?
You gotta
ask.
Yeah, right. It's gotta be vet minimum. Like that's the only way you take that guy on. I don't know the last time he played basketball. It's the same thing as Zach Collins for me, and he just got 7 years, $22 million with the Spurs.
Yeah.
As long as the Pels don't walk away with something like that, like I'm a little more happy. Solomon Hill, I think that's all a little PTSD for all of us. But Charles, would you feel the same way about Justice Winslow? It seemed like you were saying something there.
Yeah, so I would say Justice Winslow's fine. Another guy I think I would prefer over Justice Winslow just because the injuries scare me. And I think they kind of fit the same role in the same boat. And surprisingly, he's somehow only 25, is Stanley Johnson. I think that same kind of role. And I think he's a little, I think it's price point with those guys. If you're taking a lottery, if you're just going out taking a flyer on them, like look at Campaign for the Suns. He was a meme. Campaign was a meme player. And now this year he was in the finals hitting big shots. Just got paid. So if you get Willie Green, that's what you get him for, to get the most out of these players, to bring the best out of them. So I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Johnson or Willie Green, or not Willie Green, Johnson or Justice Winslow, someone like that, if the cost is cheap.
Hey, Charles, you ain't wrong. Willie Green might actually have to play for this team at this point. Like it's not far off.
I know.
Player coach coming back, Bill Russell style.
The fact that you just said that Stanley Johnson is that you just said Stanley Johnson is 25 has me shook. Like there is that dude is 25.
Yeah, he's young forever.
And you could get him so cheap too. I mean, his value is at the floor right now. And I mean, when you look at free agency, there's a couple different guys that are kind of around that level that the Pels could take a flyer on. I mean, Rondé Hollis Jefferson, that's a big guy you can add. People have been talking about him for a long time. And I mean, there's other guys that are around. Kelly Oubre. I mean, and that's been mentioned a few times. Are there any other free agents you guys are aware of that you want the Pels to go after? And we'll talk about trades next, but free agency, any guys left out there that you guys are intrigued by? Lynn?
I'm looking at the list right now. If we need a point guard, I wouldn't be mad going back to UL's own Alfred Payton for like a small flyer type situation of some light money. I wouldn't be mad at that. But if we're going after like forwards, 4s, 3s, 5s, maybe taking a flyer on
we're talking about Stanley Johnson and Alfred Payton. Like, this is bleak.
Hey, let's bring Uncle Lee back.
I was literally about to say, can we get each one back? Because I at least like him.
Hey, wait for it.
Eric,
Chris, don't use profanity in the chat, please. Thank you.
One of the other guys I had on my list here, Paul Millsap is still out there. He's aging. He's a switchable big. He's a veteran, not somebody that I necessarily am huge on. I would prefer not to pay him a lot of money.
Patrick Peterson. Patrick Patterson, I think.
Peterson, he's great too.
And then there's Denzel Valentine, Wes Matthews, Victor Oladipo still out there. And then if you're looking at offense, there's like Reggie Jackson, and Lou Williams is still available.
I mean, if you're gonna throw a defense to the wind, just throw a big number at Markkanen and just goes, hey, go shoot. Like just stand outside and shoot threes. I mean, there's really not a lot available, at least free agent wise, that's gonna move the needle for him. I don't think.
Yeah, these guys are available for a reason on day 2. You know what I mean? So they can help, but if you're counting on anything big from any of the players left, I think it shows where this free agency has gone for the Pelicans. Even as I'm happy with Devonte Graham, I think if you were to ask Griff, he would say this is not how he planned it to work out.
Yeah. That Tim Hardaway Jr. trade is tweet that I put out today. That rumor that Kevin O'Connor said is pretty telling. From what I've heard, he is, along with a few other of the big names that were available in free agency, that the Pelicans tried to throw money at and it didn't work. So that sucks. Are you guys in the boat of, I'm glad we didn't overpay, or we should have, or I wish we would have gotten somebody else? Where do you guys fall in that realm? Because we didn't really address it that much. Charlie, you go ahead.
Well, we are 24 hours into what would be the wait time in order to wait and see whether or not Charlotte matched on Devonte Graham. So I believe it's 3 days on restricted free agents that they have time to match. So if 3 days, I mean, not to say we're not going to know, but 3 days would theoretically have ticked by and then get him for not giving up a first round pick. But really, it's just like all comes down to that Chicago return being so negligible, and then not being able to move that for Graham. Because if that was the case, even if you just got one pick from Chicago, then you moved it over for Graham, I don't think anybody would really be all that upset right now because they have so many options. But the fact that they moved back 7 spots in a good draft, then they dealt another pick next year. They've dealt another pick just to get Graham. They're not going to be able to trade their 23 pick, which would have the most value at the deadline, to upgrade the team again. So they've just really hamstrung themselves for the next 9 months to a year, depending on how things go, unless they're able to swoop in and just get somebody on a trade that they're lucky with.
Lynn?
I'm kind of leaning with Charlie. I'm kind of like, we have to just see if a trade can happen, getting some sort of wing that way in trying to see the Ingles, the Barnes, like Charles said, Buddy Hield as well. One of those guys in a trade. That's what I'm looking for. If not, I really don't know where the help's going to come free agent wise.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Tim Hardaway Jr. did decline that shows how we're looked at, like the perception of the team in the franchise right now from outside of the organization. Like, I'm pretty sure, in the organization, I think all that noise in us as fans, because we pay attention to stuff, like, it's not, we realize, it's just about winning. But to people that don't follow the Pelicans every day, if you're a player and you just hear about the Pelicans, like, to a non-observer, we don't have a good reputation, fair or unfair. So I think, until that shifts, until we start winning, counting on free agency is always going to be a gamble. Like, there's a reason we gave Solomon Hill $48 million. It's not because Dell Demps wanted to, it's because that's what was out there, and that's what we have to do to get free agents. You have to overpay. So until that changes, and the way that changes is just simply winning. And I think if you look at the roster we have right now, it's good enough to compete for a playoff team. And when we look at Luka's situation, the Dallas has struck out on everybody. They still made the playoffs, and I think now the pressure is on our best players. We can hound Griff into the, he messed up. He signed Eric Bledsoe. He signed Steven Adams. We know what he did. But the bottom line, I think we look at our roster, it fits better than it did last year. And it's now the training wheels are off on BI and Zion. Like, you guys got to go out there and win some regular season games. Like, I don't think that's too much to ask for.
To a point you just said, Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams are gone. And as of right now, I think even with, the negativity that I'm saying here, I still think this roster is like mostly pretty talented enough to make the playoffs. I thought last year's roster should have made the playoffs if they just, don't play Eric Bledsoe. But now guess what? The Grizzlies have it. They have Bledsoe and Adams, and they have lost arguably their best player from last season or their second best player from last season. So, in my opinion, you're jumping Grizzlies as far as the quote unquote, power rankings on paper right now.
And the Spurs.
The Spurs are dead.
Yeah,
the Magic's gone. I mean, like the Pelicans had a rough week. The Zach Collins, the Doug McDermott,
Cognac.
Spurs,
It's over.
there's Popovich better come back from Japan real quick because it's not looking good over there in San Antonio.
Keldon Johnson better be better than Zion already. We'll see how that shakes out for him. Hoping for you, Spurs. Anyway, speaking of the regular season, this roster being better, personally, we still got to talk about trades, but since we're on the topic, I'd like to think that Willie Green will actually put something together that's conducive for the roster to be successful, like actually have a little bit of fast pace, unlike trying to set everything up in the half court like SVG did this last year. And I mean, I just think this team overall got better once Willie Green was hired. And I know this hiring happened a while ago. It's not necessarily in the moment, but I haven't really talked about it with anybody else. I loved the hiring of Willie Green. I think it's huge for what they want to do in terms of keeping Zion around. Just it's purely based on the fact that Willie Green is not an asshole. To put it bluntly, that's the way I feel about the whole situation.
No, you're right. And the fact that every player that's played for him has come out and said he is such a good coach, but he knows how to be stern. You know what you want from him. It's very open. I can't be mad at that, and that makes me excited. But the moment we lost Bledsoe and Adams, that's where I was like, "Oh, we're better. We're better. It's done. Those two dudes are gone." And that is Griff's greatest failure right there. Like if we ever look back on this, and it's going to be the Bledsoe and Adams in that year or two. And I agree
Bledsoe,
with you,
Adams,
really
and Stan Van Gundy. Don't let's
you cannot. It's the trifecta.
Just failed. That was horrible. He failed completely that entire offseason, And I think the one thing I will give credit is, trying to correct those mistakes, but those mistakes cost us assets. So if we end up losing Zion, then we would go look back at that. But as far as right now, I like that you're getting rid of you're getting rid of negative energy in the building. And that kind of sounds cliche, but you're getting rid of Lonzo, he moved on. He didn't want to be there. So instead of bringing him back.
I love him, but that's the thing. He did not. Yep. He hated the situation. He wanted to go. So it's get that energy out of here.
Yes, because that thing that lingers. And I think the last regime under Dell, he kind of too often brushed that to the side. Oh, you know what? No, we'll get to that down the road. We'll just bring Eric Gordon back. And even though he doesn't want to be here, we'll just, we'll deal with it later. And eventually, if you just keep pushing, even with the AD, the rumors, he kind of just kept brushing it to the side. And eventually that stuff manifests and lingers to where it just all hits at once. So I like getting in Stan Van Gundy, the players aren't feeling them. There's a negative vibe. Get rid of it right away. Don't let that stuff linger. And you replace a guy that didn't want to be here with the guy who does want to be here for half the price. You get rid of Stan Van Gundy. You get a young coach that can relate to the players, that is all about positive energy and positive coaching. So, I like that aspect of it, but we'll see how it translates.
Called New Orleans home, all that. That presser was awesome. I love Willie Green, and I chopped up a little bit of what he said, and I think I put it on my TikTok for my 13 followers there as I'm trying to expand the audience for the podcast. But it got, I think, 2,500 views, and it's because he elaborated on it's just different with this year's player, with these players now. I mean, you have to build a relationship. You have to let them know that you care about them. And that's a significant part of coaching. It breeds a much healthier environment than what Stan Van Gundy had. I mean, you said it. It's not insignificant. This is not a little thing. This is a very overarching thing where people can say, oh, they just didn't want to work hard. Screw off. Stan Van Gundy's a dick. How do you actually want to perform like that when your boss is not an effective leader? That's just where it's at for me. Charlie, did you have anything to say on the topic?
No, I 100% agree with that. Charles is dead right on that. As far as just having someone that actually like cares about you, treats you as a person, and like wants you to succeed more than just. Chris he's right about one thing, more than just X's and O's and trying to win basketball games. Now, I do want to say like Van Gundy couldn't have come into a harder situation. He shouldn't have taken the job, but dude coming in on a pandemic with like no training camp, a lot of team turnover, like it was a total disaster. Like they shouldn't have fired Gentry last year, like just because it was already going to be a mess and disaster as it was, and it just hindsight's 2020. Like, you can't say it's perfect, but there was just a multitude of mistakes that led to that situation. But all that said, they did need to get to a point where the energy is better. I think Graham, in like Charles said earlier, in a vacuum, I think this is a great switch out. I think despite his limitations as a defender, despite his size and other issues, he does give an energy and a playmaking level that is consistent with Lonzo's, while also being like just a better influence and still a decent shot maker. And then if you don't have Bledsoe gone, that's obviously, addition by subtraction. Getting rid of Adams, that's, some people were much more happy than others, but still he was a paint clogger. There's no question there. There's a lot of benefits that have happened. How they have gone about getting there has been a pretty much like, tire fire. They've hit every, branch on the way down of the tree, so to speak. But if they can get one or two other guys, preferably like, a vet or two that can help continue to stabilize the locker room, play a little defense, for God's sake, maybe, please, I hope, I beg of you. They should be in a fine position. They really should. Like ultimately, like, things are looking, quote unquote dour, and they look kind of like foolish. And a lot of people are chiding them from national media, and rightly so, but simultaneously they're not that much worse off. Like they really aren't.
Not Sacramento. So.
Yeah. And we gotta also, like, I know it doesn't feel like it, but it's only going into year 3. You know what I mean? And Zion did not play his rookie season. Like Zion, and I know David Griffin catches a lot of slack for where we're at, but let's be fair. The first year, a pandemic, Zion comes into camp to the bubble out of shape. He has to leave, comes back in. So like, how can anybody account for that? And I think the biggest thing with Griff is that I want to see these first round picks start translating to wins. You know what I mean? Like I want to see I want to see Jackson. I want to see Trey Murphy and Kyra. And I think I'm a little slower on Kyra, but be productive. I want to see step forward from him. And Trey Murphy is supposed to be ready to plug and play. Like it's time for those guys to, especially Jackson, not specifically, to take on bigger roles, because the rest of the draft class is the 4th pick you traded for, the DeAndre Hunter. He's producing on a winning team, balling. When he's not all hurt. The guys around Jax when he's not hurt. But it's time to see, for me, his draft picks start producing, and then that's what I'm more critical of, and that's what's going to ultimately. Hey, is this team a fringe playoff team to a surefire playoff team? Is seeing those young guys.
And that's the thing. It's like we said originally, BI and Zion, y'all got to make this your team, but then it's those other guys like Jackson, y'all got to step up and be the guys that lift those two dudes up, because if not, then that's where we get to the issue. Instead of looking veteran, it's like might have to look inside, even though we do need those veterans, but inside the building has to start producing a lot more.
Oh yeah, and I really do. Obviously, we don't know what's going on with Jackson. For God's, I really hope that dude comes back. He can be just lights out fucking good. Like, excuse my language. That's the second time I've sworn on the podcast tonight. But he can be lights out good. Like, he hit those 3 threes in one game. He's using his athleticism effectively. I mean, that dude is a 1% of 1% athlete. Like, he can be something real if he just, could not get arrested. Would you guys agree with that?
I love Jax. I got all the Jax stock. I got his Top Shot. I got his cards. I think the same thing. I see the vision. I see a guy who came into his own last year at the end of after the All-Star break. Him and Na that looked like they figured out how to contribute on the NBA level, and that's why I'll give Stan a little credit. He couldn't inspire, but I think he did help coach those guys.
Those two, because not even credited him.
Right, Nall was the only one.
What was the Instagram post?
He was
like it sure was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But see ya. So now, okay, we talked about the possibility of maybe adding some of these fringe guys free agency. We referenced maybe going after Ingles and maybe even Bojan from Utah, the Barnes or Buddy Hield from Sacramento. Is like, how does this happen? Like, what moves are made in order to get those guys? How do they warp it into this trade? And do other teams send assets their way? Is there a different way they get somebody else? How does this team get better from where they're at? And personally, this point I'm not even going to try to say that. I think the team is better than last year already, but they definitely have to get better elsewhere too. Point of attack defender, probably a big, like a 4-5, and wings, and maybe some depth in the backcourt too. Where do you guys land on how does this team get better? How, like, tangibly, where do things go and how do things move around for them to make an acquisition that makes them better in one of those spots? Charles, go ahead. Do you have anything?
So there's a few ways, I think, off the top of my head. I'm thinking the first way, you got to expand this Memphis trade, or in this Charlotte or this Lonzo Ball. Like, you try to get other teams involved, try to get some picks moving around, some players moving around, maybe, and then you have Satoransky and Hart. That's where I would start if I'm Griff, is trying to package those two role players, two solid, I would depth pieces that are on deep. Satoransky's an expiring. Hopefully you get Hart on a team-friendly deal. Try to move those two guys for maybe, like I said, you go to Sacramento or I know Ingles has been rumored in Bogdanovich, but I think if I'm Utah, that's like a last resort option. I'm moving those guys because, they were just the 1 seed, but I'm trying to use that package. If not, and if you really feel like the pressure to make the playoffs, it's not what I would do, but then you still have young talent on the team that you can dangle in as, to go bring a difference maker back. Maybe you dangle a Kyra. Maybe you dangle someone like I don't think they'll move Na because they're but you look at someone like Kyra or Didi or Najee and you throw some second round picks. There's a little sweeteners I would try to do to go and find that difference maker. If not, you still have your MLE. I believe, right? The Pelicans still have their MLE. Then use that. You go maybe get a Kelly Oubre. So those are the type of moves I think right now Griff should be prioritizing. And then you start scraping the bottom of the barrel. And no disrespect to those guys, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like afterwards, that's when you look at Justice Hill. But right now, I'm looking at Satoransky, Hart, and try to expand the trades we already hear rumored, like the Grizzlies trade or that Lonzo trade, and seeing if I can maybe send that pick somewhere else. And I know Griff is known for those massive trades. We saw it last year with Drew. Maybe he's got something up his sleeve.
Lynn, how about you?
Charles took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I would be doing, looking at. And I just want to add on about Oubre. If you're trying to give someone money, like I'm not a fan of doing maybe $90 million. But if you're gonna try to do that, you could take a swing at him, because for him not to be signed now, that is interesting to me, because I thought he would have been one of the wings gone. So maybe take a crack at him. But like Charles said, you got to package Satoransky and Hart and look to move them and see what you can get back for them.
Charlie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I don't mean to belabor the point because it's already gone, but like, again, I'd really like a 2022 first round pick right now. But I think you have to look at the guys that are really strapped for cash. Like, Atlanta is going to almost certainly have to pay John Collins. Now, he's turned down 125 for 5, I think. Which seems kind of crazy to me, but regardless, okay, if he comes around to 125 for 5, They've got guys that are coming up. They're going to have to find a way to manage that. They've already talked publicly about the potential for having to cut cash. I would really like to. Yeah, see, Reddish, I agree. I love Reddish. But I think you could maybe be more inclined to get something like Bogdanovich from them. Bogdanovich is 28. He's on a 3-year deal. He's a veteran in his prime. He has less upside, but he could potentially help now. He fits nicely into any one of these trades. Maybe you would be able to push for swinging some. I'm not going to hypothesize on how they'd be able to maneuver the picks and pieces around to get him. But that's the kind of guy that I'm looking at. I'm looking at all these teams that have these big, restricted and free agents, even Sacramento. I know we're talking about Buddy and Barnes. The reason we're talking about them is part because they're looking at paying Rashawn Holmes, like 4 for 46 or something like that, depending on which number you've looked at. So there's a lot of other players that you might be able to attain purely because of the cash situation from other places. And that's what I would look at. That's why I look at Barnes and I look at Bogdanovich. I'd like to get like a veteran, versatile player that might be able to plug in multiple situations. If you got Bogdanovich, maybe you could start gnawing Bogdanovich and you just get like a little bit bigger and more rangy. Guys, I really want Reddish. Don't worry. Like I know the comments are saying Reddish. I wanted us to draft Reddish. I was all for Reddish. I love the guy out of college. I really wanted Reddish at 8 when they took Jax. So it's I would love Reddish. I just don't know if they can attain him. And even if they do, then they're going to have to pay 4 guys from that same draft class at once, which creates its own mess of problems.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was with a question. Wasn't Reddish? He was rumored to be available at the deadline, right? For Lonzo, was that one of the little rumors thrown out there?
There was some speculation. Yeah, I mean, don't even get me started on passing up on Lonzo deals from the deadline.
Yeah, and and Cam is supposedly he and Zion are better friends than Zion and RJ are. I heard that on Twitter. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but like what the Hawks did this last year, they just loaded up on wings, and look where it got them. I mean, obviously Trey is absolutely a hooper. Like that dude is the definition of a hooper. And the thing about adding Bogdanovich is we know that dude is just a Pelicans killer. So it's like you add him and take away from the other team, and he's a bucket too. I mean, Danilo Gallinari's on that team. What happens there?
Gallo would be awesome. I mean, trust me. Oh my gosh, I'd love Gallo.
They loaded up on wing shooters.
And what do the Pelicans need?
Wing shooters.
There you go. And what it comes down to is, and this is something we've all said. I'm just going to reiterate it to hit the point. You're looking for a team that wants to make space in their cap. That's what you're looking for in order to bring on somebody, i.e., I mean, Utah, they just paid Mike Conley, so that's why they would want to give up Joe Ingles or Bojan Bogdanovic. The Kings are strapped, so adding Barnes or Buddy Hield. Barnes is more of a defender, but he can hit shots. He's not Buddy Hield, but he can hit shots. He's been to the championship with the Warriors and all of that. I think if the Pels make one move like that, and then, put Herb Jones on a 2-way and open up a little bit of space in terms of adding a free agent like a Kelly Oubre, and they're able to afford all of this, taking big steps in the right direction. That's what's happening, taking big steps in the right direction.
I agree, Ellie. I think if you're able to get like one player like this, one $15 to $20 million player that is, quote unquote available. I don't say that, but someone that's superfluous to their team, but could make a serious impact to the Pelicans. If you're able to do that, and then, like you said, use your MLE and go after Oubre, go after whoever, take your pick of one of the random players available. But preferably for me, someone that like is hungry, someone that wants to be here, someone that's really, out to prove themselves. Like Oubre, I like, obviously he's, he's a local kid and everything, but, he's got up and down. So, I mean, but that's just one name. There's a lot of options that they could. So get somebody that can fit into that spot. I I'd love it. I have no idea if Indiana would be willing to part with Brogdon anymore. I think we've all talked about him in multiple times. I'd love to get him. I doubt that he's available. Yeah, I'd love Brogdon. I've loved him forever. Great guy. But Brogdon, Bogdanovich, somebody like that. Find somebody that they can able to pull or pry from someone that's cash strapped and use the advantages you have.
Yeah. And it's just hard for me now to see since we got Graham, I feel like that was part of the Lonzo deal, like that was our big, I feel like the Lonzo was the big chip to try to bring someone back. And, now that he's gone, we got Graham. Who else can we really move that teams would want for a player like Brogdon? I know it's teams, you said it's someone that's looking to fill up space, but now we can't trade the pick. It's tough. And then I think it's going to, unless I see these trades expand into multiple teams, I don't know if we even have the assets right now to go get someone big in the deal.
And that's the scary thing about how Charlie kept saying if we had that first round pick.
Yeah.
Real nice.
Going and getting a Brogdon becomes less and less possible as these things move forward. Like everybody was talking about a sign and trade for Lonzo, and that was the most feasible way I saw that happening. Otherwise, I don't know how they go out and get.
It was the only way. I thought,
yeah. One more thing before we move on. I guess before we go, the coaching staff, they're retaining Teaspoon, Fred Vinson. I'm assuming D House, some of these other guys. Have you heard anything more? You guys heard anything more or have anything to say about the pursuit of a lead assistant? We got this question from Reed City 5 about the staff. I haven't heard anything. All I know is Green really complimented Teaspoon, Fred Vinson, the rest of the staff in his presser, and I'm assuming that those few are sticking around. Also heard about Sam Mitchell having an interview with the Pels a couple weeks ago. Apparently that hasn't come to fruition, like him being the lead assistant or anything. Any comments on that? Anything you guys have heard or anybody you'd want for the lead assistant position?
Mike D'Antoni. If we're gonna go offense, baby, go full board. Let's go. Let's get 7 seconds or less in. Give me Mike D as your associate head coach, and just let the boys run. No, but in all seriousness, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think Willie's literally been on the job for like what, a week and a half.
Yeah.
So I'll give him a little bit of grace period. It's kind of weird that he's walking into like almost like a fully formed staff. It's just odd. But he's a young guy. He seems malleable. And also everyone seems to love Spoon and Vincent and everybody there. So it's like, it's hard to, wrestle with that. But we do need a 30 for 30 on Fred Vinson one day. The man has survived more change than like the French Revolution. Like it's unbelievable how many like regimes he can just withstand. I can't even believe it.
Do you teach history?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Any of you other guys have any questions, or not questions, but any suggestions about who you'd like to be, who you would like to be the lead assistant for the Pelicans or associate head coach Charles Lynn?
No name specifically, but just like hearing Willie Green, I hear his interviews and talk. He's less about X and O's and more about, player development, player relating to the players, being able to understand them. And I think the same, I would say Spoon and Vincent are almost like in that same boat. They have good player relations. Players like them. They're good at player development. And I agree with Willie. X's and O's aren't the most important thing for a coach. Being able to get people to buy in. But with that being said, I guess for me, the lead assistant, I would go for somebody that can maybe scheme the hell out of a game plan, get you scheme up a defense, scheme an offense. So Mike D'Antoni, he fits that bill. He's someone I would be fine with. Maybe another name but just a guy in X's and O's scheme guy would be who that would be my preferred target.
I echo that. Like to me, I don't really care who the lead assistant is at this point, because I think the players, I'm so sick of just coach after coach after coach to where I just want to see the players produce. I just need them to perform to where it's like what Charles just said. Like, if they like this guy, if they're getting people who have this right energy to where they buy in, I'm cool with it. Just get someone who can drop a play if need be.
You know, just like Lynn said, I mean, who do y'all want for coach next year while we're at it? Like, let's just go ahead and get ahead. I mean,
don't. Just
it's pretty. Well, go ahead. I would say it's pretty wild though. Willie said in this press conference, like that was the first question he asked Griff. Like,
you'd have to ask that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yes, exactly. And now, for me, the choice that you guys are mentioning about X's and O's, it's got to be a former head coach in my opinion, and a guy who's coached Zion before. That's Sam Mitchell right there. I really like the fit. But that's just me. And that'll wrap it up for us, unless you guys have any other thoughts or anything you wanted to ask the other Pels guys in this conversation. You guys have anything? No?
I got a message to the haters and the trolls out there. I'm putting $100 on the line.
He just
making the playoffs. So, and I'm not capping. This is real.
I'm with him on that. I
anybody
agree.
want to take me up? Right. Let's do it. And I'll add Big Perk, and maybe we can get a funding going for Pelicans fans if he want to run his mouth. So anybody running their mouth, listen.
I'll put a bet on the line. Pelicans make the playoffs. ESPN removes Perkins from television. How about
that?
Let's start that going.
Start a GoFundMe, right?
Yeah. Buy him out. Jesus. I had to watch the ABC draft. I had to watch Henry Golding and like the guy from like all these other random actors wishing like congratulations for getting drafted. Like I literally, I'm watching. Jalen was fine, Sinead was fine, but I'm over here watching the ABC version because I can't stand Kendrick Perkins, for God's sakes.
All right, gentlemen, that's the way I wanted to end this podcast, is talking about Kendrick Perkins. So we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. LaRocca 504, CWG the second, and Lynn BWT on Twitter. These guys do great stuff covering the Pelicans. Go check them out. Before you go, you make sure you subscribe, like, drop a comment, all that, your thoughts on the Pelicans. And if you missed any part of this show, you can go back and watch it, whatever platform you're listening to it on, or check out Pelicans Plus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, etc. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. This was Pelicans Plus.